All right, let's do this. Draft season. Look at mile marker already in here. Love the dedication. Saying, "Good evening. Lions revealed new jerseys much better than the old gray long johns and blueberries." That's awesome. I gotta say, those new Lions uniforms are pretty sweet, if I say so myself. Exceeded expectations. I feel like I don't know if you follow NFL Wardrobe Monitor. I think that's NFL Uniform Monitor, something like that. There's a Twitter account that keeps track of all of the NFL uniforms, and he was a big fan of that. And he was saying the modern classic revival. So I'm loving the trend here. Yeah, those are pretty sweet. I can't lie. I love seeing the blacks come back too. Makes me think of rookie Calvin Johnson. Yeah, and the blue helmet with the blacks suits it much better than the blue helmet with the grays. You should check it out. It's a good account. I feel like you'd enjoy it if you are big into uniforms. I feel like that's something up your alley. You've got Caden in here too saying, "Oh yeah, baby, look at that. Already two people in here." Chat going off. Yeah, we've got a mock draft today. We'll wait for a few more people to get in here. Mock draft with a caveat, of course. I say mock draft. I've used the quotes a lot now. If you've been following on Twitter or on the community post and now the title. There, you know, I've got my own way of doing mock drafts. I think it'll be a good preview for the draft. That's what I'll say. But we'll get into that for a little bit. But yeah, how you guys doing? You guys know the drill, right? When you're in here, feel free to say hello. Just pop on in. It's been a while, so it's very good to be back. I didn't take a drink out of this water. What am I doing? Been busy with work. I got my hair cut, of course, as you guys might notice. Chopped off the flow. Gone but not forgotten, but it was definitely time. I would have probably died of heat stroke out in the Georgia heat. It's already getting hot out here. And you know what? I don't mind the short hair. It's kind of grown back on me a little bit. So we've got the short hair back. Short hair doctor is back, and we're a week away from the draft, folks. It's kind of hard to believe. It has been building for a long time, and also it feels like it's snuck up on us. And man, I gotta say, this is like the most important Vikings draft of my lifetime. So I'm a little nervous, but I'm super excited. So it should be a good one. Mile marker saying, "Looking good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it." Shout out Great Clips. Got my haircut there a few weeks ago. So yeah, we've been a loyal Great Clips customer for a while. Look at that. We got a little inner chat interaction now. 5 people in here. Yeah, of course. Feel free to say hello if you're in here. We'll get started in a little bit, but we got to let people file in on this fine Thursday evening. Best friend in St. Paul. Really? Right now? Interesting. Nice. The lesser known twin of the Twin Cities. I gotta say, St. Paul's a nice place. I've been there a few times. I've only been to St. Paul proper a few times, but it's a nice area. Nice little downtown, a lot of stuff to do there. And fun fact, Caden and I, with his family, actually once got like that frozen rolled ice cream. You'll know it when you see it. Like they freeze the ice cream and they roll it up. That was fun. That was before we went on our Tough Mudder run, which, fun fact, Caden, I actually still get ads for Tough Mudder, even now, like 3 years later. Mile marker saying he's a Vikes fan, nervous and a little weary and wary. Oh, I feel you. I mean, this could just go in so many different ways. And the very weight of this franchise. I don't want to be dramatic, but it's a very, very impactful draft that is really going to decide the legacy of Quasi and KOC. Fair or not? Fair or not? I think they've done a good job so far, but it is kind of all riding on this a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see. You used to live downtown St. Paul, the Point High Rise 21st floor. That sounds like a nice little spot right there. Ooh. Yeah, the Midwest connection, man. What can I say? What can I say? Well, let's see. Other than the new uniforms, there hasn't been a whole lot of news recently. I know teams are just getting their last second visits in with prospects before the draft, right? No trades, obviously. I feel like any trade we see at this point, we're going to see during the draft. It just makes more sense, right? You don't want to tip your hand. You don't want to get leapfrogged, any of that stuff. So, some people might wonder, like, oh, are the Vikings going to trade up at all? They made that trade with the Texans like a month ago now at this point, and nothing has happened since. If the Vikings are going to move up, it's going to happen later. Or if another team like the Broncos or the Raiders are going to move up for a quarterback, it'll probably happen later. But Yeah, I'm not seeing a whole lot of news. I'm checking ESPN right now. I don't have my screen up, but we'll dive into the mock soon enough. Caden saying ditto. When I was looking for a time to come to Atlanta, I thought I was cooking with the idea of Tough Mudder because I know they travel there, but the one in Atlanta is on April 26th. Oh, that's tough. That's in like a week. That's crazy. There's a video out there somewhere of me just absolutely just diving headfirst into a pool of mud doing this run. If you're not familiar with Tough Mudder, it's like a 5K, 10K. There's different options, but it's like an obstacle course. It's pretty sick, honestly. It was a lot of fun back in my running phase. Trying to get back into that a little bit, but I'm a working man now. All right, well, we're going to take a swig of water, and we might get started here. We'll see. Kate's saying the greatest video ever. I don't know. We'll give it a few more minutes here because the draft, I mean, after pick 1, pick 2 is where things get interesting. Not actually, but kind of. I mean, I think we all know who pick 2 might be at this point, but you never know. Hopefully my audio's okay. I've been playing with my mic a little bit more. I know that like it does get pretty quiet. You might have seen the mic move into the frame a tiny bit there. I'm trying to avoid that, but if it happens, it happens. But I've been messing around with the settings a little bit. And I also switched my screens around so that the main screen that I'll be looking at is in front of me now. I know the mic kind of blocks it some, but we'll keep upgrading our setup once the time comes. But as for now, this is what we're rocking with. It should be pretty good. This was the setup I used to record my latest video, too. As we've got Jack in here saying, man is looking like a snack. Thank you, Jack. Welcome back to the stream. Been a minute, but it's good to have you back in here. It's draft season, baby. We're going to be talking about your Seahawks as well as every other team in the first round. So sorry, Panthers, Texans, and Browns, but we will run through the first round here today. As Mile Marker saying, better volume this time for sure. Perfect. All right, we just keep inching it back up. Yeah, I won't lie. I go back and listen to these, right? I'll listen for like audio quality and stuff like that. And yeah, it gets pretty quiet on my phone. So hopefully this is a little bit better. And I might just even mess around and turn it up just a tiny bit more. I know, shout out Professor Shumway, as you might be able to see my screen now. Actually, I just switched sources, but that was just to fix the volume. Shout out Professor Shumway for teaching me about audio levels. He says to never go past -12 decibels, which you might see like if you ever have an audio mixer up or whatever. I can't explain that very well, but we adjusted it by 1 more decibel. All right, I've been yapping enough. I think it's about time. Let's just get started. We've got a good group in here. It's a nice Thursday night, right? Friday Junior. The weekend is almost upon us. Hope you guys have some fun, exciting plans. We're going to dive into it. All right, let's switch the screen. So, before we get started, here's what I'll explain, and here's why I've been like dancing around like the whole like mock draft label, and I've got like quotes and everything. So This is kind of vibes based, and what I mean by that is a lot of people, they might make mock drafts and they'll try and predict the pick, and man, I respect the heck out of it. Like the Mel Kipers of the worlds that try and like they're on the phone with GMs and stuff. I know Peter Schrager does that too, like where they just straight up like, we are just trying to like, based off what we hear, we are going to guess the trades, the picks, and everything. That is so hard to do, man. That is such a, I don't want to say fool's errand. Like, I respect it. It's fun, right? It's fun. But that is just so hard to do. So that's not quite what this is. Because I feel like there's 2 types of mocks. There's the types that predict, and then there's the types where it's like, okay, well, this is what I would do if I was the GM. This isn't quite that either, because I recognize that, like, what I personally would do if I was the GM of all these teams, and this was me looking out in the best interest of these organizations, what I would do is maybe not quite realistic and not quite going to happen. Like, there are moves, like, shoot, if for those of you that follow me on Twitter and saw the results of the mock draft I did with my friends, right? I had the Patriots pick at 3. I took Marvin Harrison Jr. That is genuinely what I would do. And I might walk through and explain that process a little bit. I'll give my own 2 cents. But I really don't think that's going to happen, right? Or Jaden Daniels, who I promise I'm not trying to pile on, just as an example, right? Like, I would not take him at 2. I would probably not take him, like, very high at all. that's not going to happen, right? He's going to go high. He's probably going to go top 3. Like, it's something we got to talk about, right? And so it is kind of like a draft preview, I guess. I'm going to try and make picks that just make sense, right? Just line the picks up. They just make sense in my brain. I've been looking at the order for a while. I've been diving into some prospects more now. You know, I said this was the year I was really going to dive in and watch film on like everyone and like go hard on the draft. And I didn't quite do that, but I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of at least the first round. So we're just going to try and make a first round that makes sense. And I'll walk through. And there's a few things that maybe aren't the most realistic, but I really tried to ground it in realism, make it make sense. There's no trades, right? Obviously, there's going to be trades. I'll highlight when there might be some spots where we could see teams swapping picks. But that predicting trades is just so hard too. So we're going to do stick and pick and just try and make everything make sense. All right, so with that in mind, drink some water, and then we'll dive in with the Chicago Bears. And I think we all know where this one's going. Caden saying Kool-Aid McKinstry to Green Bay. Well, we will see, my friends. We will see, won't we? On the Kool-Aid train. You know, it wouldn't be the first time that the Packers took an Alabama defensive back with a unique first name. Remember HaHa Clinton Dix? All right, let's get started. So, no, we're not going to do any trades. Let's start the draft. Bears on the clock, first overall. I think we all know who this is going to be, right? It's going to be Caleb Williams. This feels like a foregone conclusion at this point. There is a brief moment in time where I had Drake May as QB1 over Caleb Williams. I talked myself off of that ledge. I'm obviously still very, very high on Drake May. I just went back and I watched like 2 more games of Caleb Williams, and I was like, no, he's just so good, man. He really is just so good. The biggest concern with him, in my opinion, really is the offense that he played in. I mean, the Lincoln Riley USC offense is not an NFL offense at all. I don't really care, though. I mean, he's just so good, man. I mean, just the sheer arm talent, just an unbelievably strong arm that can make every single throw, right? The off-platform stuff, the different arm angles, that's all fancy, but it can be useful, and he seems to at least be fairly reined in. Like, he's not Zach Wilson just doing it to do it. Like, oh, he sidearms a screen, but, like, it makes sense because he has to get it around the defender and stuff. Like, he's not stupid about it, you know? I think the big thing really with Caleb, though, is just I am blown away with how good of a runner he is. I mean, man, like you get him in the open field, he's making guys miss, and he just looks fast out there. Like we all know he's a mobile quarterback, and he does a very good job of using his legs to set up passes. But like he is totally a guy that I could see rushing for like 700 yards if you design some runs for him. So he's a bit smaller, but he's got a decent frame. Obviously, he's not going to be out there taking like 10 carries a game, but man, he is an electric runner. So he really has about everything you need. Probably the best prospect since Trevor Lawrence. I like the comparison of prime Seahawks Russell Wilson to Caleb. It just makes so much sense. And the Bears have set up such a nice environment for him. Slam dunk first overall pick. As Jack is saying, Bears take Spencer Rattler number 1. The Spencer Rattler take. I stand with Spencer Rattler. That's what I'll say. I don't know that I've got him going in the first round, but I tell you what, take a flyer on him in the second or third round and see what happens. Mile Marker saying, yeah. Henry's saying, what's up, Doc? Won't be able to stay long. Just jumping in to say hi. We'll appreciate it. Welcome to the mock draft of sorts. Just went through Caleb Williams. We're on to the Commanders now. Mile Marker saying, if the Bears don't take Williams, it will throw the whole draft. Oh, could you imagine? I mean, if he's still on the clock at 2, it's Cliff Kingsbury's like best day ever, right? I mean, people are theorizing he went to Washington to try and get Caleb Williams. But he probably went to Washington for a different quarterback instead. And so this is sort of like a prediction of what I think is going to happen, right? And I think I scrolled past him. Yeah. Commanders at 2. I really do think Jaden Daniels does make a lot of sense for them. Now, I've given my Jaden Daniels take before, right? And, let's say some positive things about Jaden Daniels, though. Let's change it up for a little bit. So here's why this kind of makes sense for the Commanders. Yeah, first of all, Cliff Kingsbury, right? Air raid offensive coordinator. That's been his scheme. That's the exact type of scheme that Jaden Daniels played in. I can sit here and question all I want about how air raid has translated to the NFL in the past few years. But man, when it's worked, it worked, He got it to work at least to an extent with Kyler Murray, right? And, clearly the Commanders see something in him. I do think that at least makes a lot of sense. Jaden Daniels would fit a lot more in this offense than, say, Drake May would. Now, there is still a part of me that thinks that they might take May. Like, I just really can't help but think, like, they could just totally take May. That would make sense, too. But the more and more I think about it, I do think that Jaden Daniels at pick 2 is going to be the call here. And at least it makes sense for the Commanders, right? And now to segue into like Henry asking a draft hot take prediction I've gotten. Ooh, okay. A hot take prediction. Okay. Let's rephrase that. Also, one more thing I'll say. The weapons are solid in Washington, right? They've got Terry McLaurin. They've got Jahan Dotson. The offensive line needs a lot of work. They do need help at other areas. I think that this defense could potentially be hilariously bad next year, but they do need a quarterback too. They got rid of both of them. So they need someone. They go get Daniels, who I think is probably going to be the guy that Cliff wants. Makes sense. Draft hot take prediction. Okay. Let me think about that for a sec. Like I'm trying to think of like who's going to be a guy that falls or maybe a guy that gets drafted early. Here's what I think that there are going to be 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round. And it's really funny that I say this because me saying that goes against completely what I'm going to do in this draft kind of. There's going to be something that happens at pick 12 and pick 13 that I do just to like walk through the fit a little bit. We'll see that when we get there. Here's what I think there's 4 quarterbacks going in the first round. I think we're going to see Caleb, Daniels, May, and McCarthy. I don't know that Penix or Nix are going in the first round, to be honest. I really think that if Penix and Nix make it past 12 and 13, they are not going in the first round. None of these teams would probably take them. That is my prediction. And I think that we've seen a lot recently that usually taking those outer tier quarterbacks in the first round isn't always a great investment. My line of thinking usually is like if you're a quarterback and you're not taken in the top 10, you probably shouldn't be taken in the first round, right? As we've got Michael in here. Welcome to the stream, Michael. Unfortunately, I'm going to make an example out of your team, the Steelers, right? They took Kenny Pickett, his first round quarterback, but he's there at 20. Like if you're a quarterback that's there at 20, you probably shouldn't go in the first round because if you're really that good, like a team would have snapped you up. I mean, look at like Kenny Pickett or Teddy Bridgewater or Paxton Lynch. And there's a few exceptions, right? You've got Lamar Jackson and Jordan Love, but those guys were both really high upside guys. And I don't think you can say the same about Penix or Nix. They don't have nearly quite the ceiling that like a Lamar or Love did. And so when you're looking at like older guys, safer guys, and they're still there, I won't take them. So yeah, I'm going to say 4 first round quarterbacks. I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, but in a little bit when we get to the Broncos and Raiders, but you'll see, it'll make sense. But good to see Michael agreeing with the take. We've got Jack saying they take Rattler since he looks like Mahomes, and they still regret not taking Mahomes. Man, oh man, I tell you what, like that is something that has dearly cost the Bears franchise. And I think like looking back, like I don't think anyone saw Mahomes being that good. Trubisky was an interesting pick, but I would also say Caleb plays at least a little bit like Mahomes too, right? There's some similarities. He looks a little Mahomey out there. Caden asking, why did Lamar slide so far? Well, here, okay, this is one other thing I want to say. I really feel like a few years ago, right? Like let's take a look at this Lamar Jackson. It was what, 2018? Yeah. I think even a few years ago, back in 2018, the NFL, and I mean, shoot, like we were all guilty of this too, right? We kind of had a big misunderstanding of athleticism at the quarterback position. And I also think that like just older preconceived notions and labels really hurt Lamar Jackson in that like he wasn't a Power 5 guy. He didn't play in like I don't want to say the most. Honestly, Louisville's offense was fairly pro style, I would say. It mirrored the NFL pretty well, but he was a scrambling guy, right? And we saw a lot of cases of like good college quarterbacks that didn't pan out very well in the NFL, and the NFL didn't even really think twice about it. Like the Broncos got laughed at when they took Tim Tebow in the first round, and Tim Tebow is one of the greatest college quarterbacks ever. Like there was not nearly as much of an overlap between the college game and the NFL. And so we saw a guy like Lamar, and he lit up college football, and he was just so dynamic. But I think it was easy for us to fall into this trap of like, oh, he's just a scrambling quarterback, right? And he fell all the way to the last pick, and it's unbelievable. And hindsight is 2020, because one thing I actually did, I went back and watched some college Lamar the other day. I found a nice Twitter thread of just like cut-ups of Lamar in college. And just like, again, hindsight is 2020. Like, I wasn't saying this back then. Like, I thought like, oh, Lamar has intriguing upside. Like 32 is probably a lot, but like I wasn't calling for like teams to take Lamar in the top 10. But man, I watched him in college and I was like, holy crap, like how did we miss this? Just not even just like the running, but just how he used his legs to set up windows, to find throws, right? That's just something he does so well. Find the opening, navigate space in the pocket, find the open throwing lane. He's done that at a high level ever since he's been in college. It's translated to the NFL. His ability to avoid pressure and sacks has translated well to the NFL. I think that's something that teams are a lot more cognizant of now, right? A lot of times sacks are on the quarterback, and if you're good at maneuvering in space, and if you're athletic and you can handle the pocket well, you can kind of get away with a little bit worse of an O-line. I mean, the Chiefs' offensive line isn't good, so in short, I feel like we didn't really understand what we were looking at in Lamar, and I think now, as a result, we're seeing higher ceiling guys, more athletic guys go higher. I mean, Jaden Daniels, Anthony Richardson, Josh Allen went high in that draft, I guess. But you know what I'm saying, right? I think Lamar and Mahomes really changed that perception. So Jack says because Josh Rosen was and still is better. The Rosen one. Yeah. Back in that draft, I like Josh Rosen. So, I mean, we all have our misses, right? All right. Patriots at 3. So here's what's going to happen. They're going to take Drake May, right? Now, this is where the conversation starts for the trade. Please, Vikings trade up. Like, if this was real life, as we'll see, I'm planning on going live for the first round of the draft a week from now, right? Patriots are on the clock. Drake May hasn't been taken. You're going to hear me say for the entire time that they're on the clock, Subway trade alert, Subway trade alert. Please show me a Subway trade alert. Show me purple, right? This is where the Vikings could do it. However, I just really don't think that the Patriots are going to pass up on a quarterback. That just seems to, like, everyone is saying they're going to take a QB. They need a QB, obviously, right? They bring in a new head coach. They're going to pair him with a quarterback. Drake May is such a talented prospect. The fact that he's at 3, like, you feel like you got to pounce on it. They're going to do it. I really feel like they're going to do it. As much as I'd love to see the Vikings trade up here, I just don't think it's going to happen. I just really find it hard to believe that Drake May is going to get passed up by 3 straight quarterback-needy teams. Now, here's what I'll say. And this is not even me, the Vikings fan, talking, right? Because I had some fun made of me at my expense. Not really. I'm being dramatic, but there are some snickers when I took when I took Marvin Harrison Jr. with the Patriots at 3 in my little mock draft I did on Sunday. This has nothing to do with me wanting Drake May to make it to 4 so it's easier for the Vikings to get him, although that would be pretty freaking awesome. Can you name 3? You could probably name 3 Patriots receivers. Look at they don't have any weapons. They have not had good receivers in years. I mean, it has truly been a problem for so long for them. Ever since even the final few years of Brady, their receiver room has just been hilariously bad. And I'm struggling to find them now. Like, they're going to be rolling out there. If they take Drake May at 3, he's going to be rolling out there with KJ Osborne, Kendrick Bourne, Pop Douglas, Jalen Reagor, Tyquan Thornton, Juju Smith-Schuster. There's not a single wide receiver 1 here. There's probably not even a single wide receiver 2 here. Like, I'm a Vikings fan. I've seen a lot of KJ Osborne. He's had his moments, but like he's a wide receiver 3. Kendrick Bourne is a fun player. I like his skill set. He's a wide receiver 3. Pop Douglas is like a gadget player. Jalen Reagor, famous bust. Tyquan Thornton, speedster, not much else. Juju, I loved him, but man, injuries have just caught up to him, and he just did nothing there last year. So I just think if I was the Patriots GM, I don't know how you could watch Bryce Young go to the Panthers last year and it just not really matter how good Bryce was or wasn't when the supporting cast was that poor. And like, you can kind of take your time with this, right? You just bring in Mayo and Elliott Wolf as your new regime, right? This was a bad team last year. If you draft a quarterback, that kind of speeds up the timetable of you being good because you need to make a decision by year 3 if you want to pick up that 5th-year option and pursue a extension for the quarterback, right? If you're Drake May, you kind of got to save them. And it's just going to be hard to do with this receiver room and this offensive line. And you know what? You've got my man Jacoby Brissett there. He's the perfect bridge guy where you can just figure out who's a keeper on this offense, buy yourself another year. I don't think you're in any rush. Now, if they take Drake May, I get it, right? He is that good. I totally get it. But man, Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe the best receiver prospect since Calvin Johnson is there. You've needed receiver since pre-COVID, and you're going to pass him up? I don't know. I think a year from now, we're going to be looking back at this and being like, man, maybe they should have taken Marv. That's what I'll say. Games solved in here. Welcome to the stream, Games. Saying, hey, doctor, quick question. Are you going to stream the NFL draft? Caden saying he is. Yeah, yes, I am. You best believe it. A week from now, we will be live for the first round of the NFL draft down here in Cleveland, Georgia. We're going to have ourselves a time. It's going to be crazy. I am so excited for this draft. Extremely nervous, but also so excited. Oh, it's going to be good. But Patriots at 3, take May. I think they should take Marv. Personal opinion. I understand May, but I don't know. All right, let's get to the Cardinals at 4. The Cardinals are pretty happy right now. They get to just go ahead and take Marvin Harrison Jr. Again, I think we all know the deal with Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point, right? An elite wide receiver prospect. He's 6'4". He's fast. I mean, he really is about as perfect of a prospect as it gets. He is probably the best player in this entire draft. He is scheme independent. You can play him anywhere, right? He usually projects to be an X receiver. You put him on the outside because of his size and his speed and just how he can high point the ball and just make some insane catches. But he is the quite literal son of Marvin Harrison, renowned route runner. Like, he has that separation ability too. If you totally want to, you could put him in the slot. And the Cardinals need a wide receiver. I mean, they got rid of their probably 2 of their 3 best receivers during this offseason, right? They let Hollywood Brown walk, who was pretty good for them last year. And then they trade Rondale Moore. Like, that is just a glaring need for a team that is kind of starting to come together a little bit. You know, I said during the draft stream last year, like, Cardinals kind of cooking. I like what Monty has been doing. They've done some good work on the offensive line, right? Michael Wilson at least looks solid. He could turn into like a good 2 or 3 for them if they bring in Marv. You've got the quarterback in Kyler Murray. The run game was awesome with James Conner last year. You've got Trey McBride too. Defense is a big concern, but you have that extra first-round pick, right? They're another team you could look to see if they trade, so they could even get 3 first-round picks. They'll be able to address this defense later, but for now, go ahead, take the best player in the draft. Take Marv, fill a big need. You got to have it, right? I mean, Marvin Harrison going 4, it almost feels like a steal, but it makes sense with the top 3 teams needing quarterbacks. I can't help but think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a top-tier player in the NFL right away. I mean, and he gets Kyler Murray as his quarterback? Sign me up. That should be fun. Jack saying, does the NFC West really need more elite receivers? Michael saying yes. You know what? Yeah. Let's add to the fun, right? We got Puka. We got Cooper Kupp. We'll add in Marv. We've got DK. We've got Lockett. Maybe even JSN takes a step forward. Oh, and then you've got Debo and Ayuk. So, yeah. NFC West, pretty good looking division if I say so myself. And, you know, I like the Cardinals. I like what they're doing. It's going to be hard for them to break through in that division, but they're on the right path. They've done a good job turning this thing around pretty quickly. Hey, Monty, you want to work the phones, though? Hey, there's no way. Anyways, The Vikings are not getting Drake May. I don't think. I mean, I would truly be happy if they did. We'll get to the Vikings in a sec. That's enough Vikings talk for now. We've got the Chargers on the clock at 5. This is another team that definitely needs receiver. And again, another potential trade down spot. You could see the Vikings or Broncos moving up for maybe J.J. McCarthy here. If they're scared the Giants are going to take him at 6, which I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll get to that in a sec. But again, this is stick and pick. Could be a trade spot. But the Chargers are in a nice spot here. You know, some people have linked them with Joe Alt because, you know, Jim Harbaugh is going to come in and run the ball 50 times a game. And I could totally see it with just the way he talks about offensive line play and the way that he's built out his teams. But they need a receiver so bad. They really do. Like, at least with their offensive line, it's like not terrible, right? They've got Rashawn Slater. So they would have to move Alt or Slater over to right tackle. Probably Slater, because I think he played that in college. But still, you wouldn't necessarily want to do that. I mean, if it works, it's a good problem to have. But here's a bad problem to have. This is the Chargers receiver room. It's Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, Darius Davis. And then this guy that I've never heard of. That's it. That's it. Those are literally the only receivers that they have on their roster right now. They got rid of Keenan and Mike Will, and I just can't help but think the reason they did that is because they know they're going to take a receiver at 5. It just makes so much sense, right? For as much as John Harbaugh might want to run the ball and all that, you've got Justin Herbert at quarterback. Please give this man some help. Please give him a weapon. Please, like just get him a healthy, good receiver. Now the question is, which one? This might be a bit of a spicier take, but I'm going to go Rome Odunze here. I honestly think Odunze makes a lot more sense for the Chargers and for Justin Herbert. He's a bit of a bigger guy, possession guy, great contested catch winner, good separate. I mean, he's a good route runner. Like, he's a good all-around receiver. Comparison I've seen a lot from him that I like is DeAndre Hopkins. This is the type of receiver that would make sense in a Jim Harbaugh offense. And honestly, this is the type of receiver that would make sense for Justin Herbert. Now, the thought of Malik Neighbors' speed on Justin Herbert deep balls is enticing, but Herbert just kind of likes to pick you apart with shorter and intermediate throws. He is kind of just like an assassin from the pocket that just gets the ball out quick, and he likes peppering the middle of the field. That's where Odunze can really make his money. You can send him on those deep digs over the middle of the field, and occasionally you can send him deep and he'll just moss a guy one-on-one. But for the most part, right, he's going to be more of a possession guy. Can't quite stretch the field, but does everything at a pretty high level. I just think that that's what makes the most sense. You get a really reliable target, and that's what this offense needs right now. The upside of Neighbors and his speed is enticing, but I think Odunze just makes more sense for their scheme, their quarterback, and he's just a really good player. Like, you could have Odunze at wide receiver 2 over Neighbors, and I would not be upset one bit. There's at least some questions about Neighbors versus press coverage, but it's kind of like a pick your poison, you know, whoever you want. All right, pick 6. We've got the Giants on the clock. Some might be thinking J.J. McCarthy here. I know Peter Schrager had J.J. going to the Giants. I don't know. I think especially with the short leash that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, their GM and coach are on a short leash. And I think that they recognize, like, they need to make this team better. Yeah, you could take J.J. McCarthy, but he's kind of a project. You don't really have 2 years to develop J.J. McCarthy. You kind of got to figure stuff out now. And they need a quarterback, but they need a lot else too. This is not a very great-looking football team right now. Honestly, a dark horse to have, like, one of the worst rosters in the league, really. Well, they've got some intrigue, right? I like their defensive line, obviously, but they lose Saquon. The offensive line is a big question mark out of a few spots. And the receiver room, man, it's really been bad since Daboll's been there. And he worked some magic his first year when they made the playoffs, and I really don't know how he did it. Like, it was truly impressive how he's getting some of these guys open. And they drafted Jalen Hyatt last year, and then they brought in Darren Waller, and that didn't really work out. I think this is another team that goes receiver in a really good receiver class. They're going to go Malik Neighbors. And again, he's a kind of guy that makes sense, and you might immediately think of the deep speed, but how about his speed after catch? I mean, a lot of his big plays at LSU were like off of screens or swing passes too. And Brian Dable, when he was at his best, he was scheming these guys open for good yards after catch opportunities, right? I mean, I think about that Giants Vikings playoff game and how all of it was just Daniel Jones throwing underneath and I don't know, Richie James was just cooking us after the catch and stuff like that. So I think if you get the speed of Neighbors, you add that in there, he's a kind of guy that Dable can work with and can be pretty good pretty quickly. And it just addresses a massive need for them. So Neighbors makes a lot of sense. Whew, we're cruising. All right. Pick number 7, the Titans. Man, the Titans have got to be fist bumping and chest bumping and hooting and hollering in the war room right now because they get their guy. This is probably the perfect draft pick right here. Out of all the picks in the first round, this is the one that just makes the most sense. It addresses a need. It's a talented player. It's exactly what they want, and it's exactly what they get. Give me Joe Alt to the Titans, right? High level tackle prospect. Probably the best tackle prospect we've seen since Sewell. Just massive, 6'8", well coached. Notre Dame always churns him out really well. And the Titans, I mean, offensive line has really been a liability for them for years now. You might not think that. You might associate the Titans with smash mouth football, and they had Mike Vrabel and Derrick Henry was running the ball 50 times a game. But even during that period, there was a lot of it where their offensive line was not very good. And they did a really good job of attacking the interior during this offseason. I really love some of the moves that they made. Lloyd Cushenberry, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated players in the league. Great get for them. They also bring in Daniel Brunskill. Peter Skoronski, year 2 now. He's filling out at guard, right? I like this interior. Tackle is still a problem, though. You got to take care of this. No disrespect to Nicholas Petit-Frere, but you got to upgrade there. Bring in Joe Alt, a high-level prospect who can come in and be a great starter right away. And I tell you what, with Alt and some of the moves that they made in free agency, and with Bill Callahan, the father of Brian Callahan, coming in as their offensive line coach, I tell you what, this Titans offensive line, I think, could be one of the most improved units in the entire NFL. Keep your eyes peeled, when the NFL starts doing, when there's all these offensive line power rankings presented by Tide or whatever, late in the season. Keep your eyes peeled for the Titans. Don't be surprised if they pop up. I really feel like this offensive line could take a huge step forward and turn into one of the better units in the league. I know I've talked about Bill Callahan a little bit. When the Titans first hired Brian Callahan, I speculated. I was like, I wonder if they'll be able to get Bill to come over. And there's a reason I rave over him so much. I mean, he is legitimately one of the best offensive line coaches in NFL history. I mean, this dude does not miss. Everywhere he has gone, he has done a bang-up job. I mean, look at this. New York Jets when they had DeBrickashaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold. And then he goes to the Cowboys when they had that sick offensive line and got DeMarco Murray an Offensive Player of the Year. And then he goes to Washington, and he does a good job with Brandon Sheriff over there. And then he goes to Cleveland when they had a great offensive line with Wyatt Teller and Joel Patonio. This dude does not miss. So I honestly think this is a massive hire for the Titans to bring in someone with the coaching acumen of him to do his magic with this position group. You bring in Joe Alt too. I'm kind of high on the Titans a little bit. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but you at least have a good environment to see what you've got in Will Levis. Calvin Ridley's there too now, so I don't feel like they don't feel quite as pressing of a need to go get receiver. And at this point, the top 3 guys are gone anyways. It just makes so much sense. It really does. All right, Titans go tackle. I love it. It just makes so much sense. Whew. All right, I needed a water break there. I've been going nonstop. All right. Falcons on the clock at 8. So the Falcons would have been an interesting player. Let's say Odunze or Neighbors was still there. You could at least consider just making just a sick offense for Kirk, right? Bring in another receiver. You've already got Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You bring in Darnell Mooney. But, man, I mean, you might feel tempted to bring in one more, right? That's not really an option for him. And I think that, honestly, that's a good thing. I think that they shouldn't have to face that dilemma because above all else, they still need help on the edge. Now, this Falcons defense was improved last year. I think maybe some of that was them thoroughly enjoying the schedule they played. I'll say that. I don't think they were like a terrible defense, but they feasted against some bad teams. But they've got some talent there, right? I really like Caden Ellis. He was a great get for them last year. The secondary looks all right. You know, you've got A.J. Terrell, Jesse Bates, two high-level starters, obviously. And the interior is pretty good with David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, and Eddie Goldman coming out of retirement. Might have not caught that, but that did happen. This team has not had a good pass rush in so long, though. Even last year, they still, I'm sorry, Arnold Ebiketie and Lorenzo Carter is just not going to cut it. If you are a team with playoff aspirations, not just playoff aspirations, you want to try and win a game, right? You're kind of forcing your hand here going with Kirk Cousins. You need to upgrade your pass rush. So go out and get the best pass rusher in the draft, Laiatu Latu. Kind of a one-trick pony, maybe. He's just a pure pass rusher. He's maybe not quite as good in the run game. But I think if you're the Falcons, you don't really care. Your interior is so strong with Jarrett, Onyemata, and Goldman that they can handle a lot of those gaps in the run game. You're looking to probably run a 3-4. That's what you've been running for a while now. So you can just place Latu directly on the edge. All he has to do is just pin your ears back and rush the passer. And he does that at a very high level. He was a phenomenal pass rusher for UCLA last year. You don't really care if that's all he's good at, because that's really all you need right now on defense. Just go out there, get a great pass rusher, fill a need, try and win a playoff game, you know? I think that's what they're going for. So I respect it. But yeah, Latu to the Falcons at 8. I think that just makes a lot of sense. Dallas Turner's a name to watch out for here too. I think Latu and Turner are probably the consensus top 2 guys as far as edge rushers go. There isn't like a generational talent. There's not a Bosa or a Mack or a Myles Garrett in this draft class, but there are good players to be had. So Falcons getting the first defender at 8, and I honestly think that is going to happen. If you want another hot take prediction, first 7 players I think are going to be offense. I totally think that is going to happen. We won't see our first defender until 8. This is a very offense-heavy class. All right, Bears back on the clock at 9. Welcome back, Chicago Bears. Got their actual pick now. Of course, they got the first pick from the Panthers. This is another team. They probably wish they could take Rome Odunze, right? There's been some talk about taking a pass catcher. I know Caden and I were having a nice conversation about that earlier today. Some people speculating maybe even Brock Bowers. I don't know. I like Kmet. I think the Bears like Kmet too. Bowers might be tempting, especially if you don't fully treat him like a tight end. I could understand that. But you have to remember, this is the Chicago Bears. They've been a defensive team. They've got a defensive head coach. And for as much improved as their defense was as soon as they brought in Montez Sweat last year, which it truly was incredible how good they got once they brought in a serious edge defender. They've got Sweat. I'm still not sold on who's opposite him, right? It's DeMarcus Walker right now as their projected starter, and Dominique Robinson, right? This is the same team that just not that long ago, my fun fact about them, back in 2022, their leading sacker was Jaquan Brisker, you know? Bringing in Sweat obviously helped, and this is a very good-looking defense, but I think you really got to double up on edge here. Get yourself another edge rusher. And to me, that's going to be Dallas Turner. Turner, and I won't say a project, bit more of a project from some of the other Bama guys we've seen, like Will Anderson. Like Dallas Turner hasn't had the jaw-dropping production that Will Anderson had at Alabama, so there's a bit of projection there, but the tools are there. I mean, he's extremely fast and athletic. He's got great size, got long arms. He is going to have to switch it up a little bit. Bama runs a bit more of a 3-4, so he's usually up in a 2-point stance. Bears more of a 4-3 team, so he'll have to put his hand in the dirt some. Maybe take a little bit more accountability in the run game, but I think with his size and his arms, that's something he can handle. And again, like if Dallas Turner hits, all of a sudden they've got a killer duo of edge players. And that was just a huge problem for him not that long ago. The Bears defense is looking really good. And I tell you what, you walk out of this draft with Caleb and a good edge player, They're a team I could seriously see like making a push for the playoffs here. I think that's a real possibility that we could see the Chicago Bears in the playoffs as soon as this year. This team is going to be good fast, in my opinion. They have really done a good job. I gotta say. But no Bowers for the Bears. I could see it. I don't know. I think they got to go defense at 9. Walk away with a quarterback and a defender. In my opinion, that makes their team best in the long run. All right, about a third of the way through. Pick 10, the Jets. This is one that I went back and forth on a lot. Here's the thing with the Jets. I could see them honestly trading back because I think that they're another team that's done a good job of patching up most of their obvious holes in free agency. We actually talked about this on our last stream. They signed Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses to shore up the tackle position. They also bring in John Simpson. All of a sudden, the offensive line ain't looking too bad. A lot of people are linking them with the offensive line. I could see it, but they really went hard to address it. They also went hard to address the receiver room, bringing in Mike Williams to be their wide receiver too. Again, high risk, high reward. Can't really stay healthy, but when he is, he's great. Compliments Garrett Wilson well. Obviously, Rodgers, you don't know what you're going to get quite with him at quarterback, and then the defense seems pretty set. I mean, it'd be hard for them to realistically make a smart upgrade on defense at pick 10. So is this where Bowers goes? It kind of makes sense on paper, right? Tight end is probably their biggest quote-unquote weakness on offense, and they could use another pass catcher, right? Outside of Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams, I mean, it's still not the greatest. You've got Alan Lazard and then Xavier Gipson, who's their punt returner, and you'd like maybe one more guy in there. I think this is a sensible landing spot for Brock Bowers. Now, I will say, personally, I want to see Brock Bowers to go to the Colts. Like, that's just what I want, you know. I think that would just be the perfect fit for player and scheme. And I really do think that as far as Brock Bowers' success in the NFL, I'm a lot more concerned with who his coach or coordinator is than his quarterback. Not to say that you need a good scheme for Brock Bowers or anything, but he is kind of a unique player. His archetype is something that I think really can succeed in the NFL, but he's not like Rob Gronkowski, where just he's such a hilarious matchup nightmare that it doesn't really matter. Like he will just overpower you so hard, right? He's a bit of a speedier guy, a bit more of an athlete. You know, he's still got good size. He's 6'5", not quite as heavy. He's a guy that's going to dominate in the flats. He's a guy that's going to be great after the catch, break a lot of tackles. You can set up some tight end screens for him. You can get him going on those crossing routes on play action and just watch linebackers try and cover him. And I think we'll see him a lot in the slot. I think he'll just be such a matchup nightmare for corners in the slot. And if you choose to run the ball with him in the slot, I mean, you've got a 6'5" blocking a nickel corner. You know, that's going to be advantage Bowers. So I am a little concerned because typically Rodgers hasn't seemed to target tight ends at a high volume in his career, and Nate Hackett's offenses have never really featured tight ends much. They are going to have to make an effort to work with him and get him the ball. You can't just toss him in there. I worry about that a little bit, but it does make sense. Mile Marker saying Rodgers, LOL, and Jack saying Bowers is going to Seattle one way or another. That would be another team I'd like to see. I would actually be very intrigued about Brock Bowers in Seattle with Ryan Grubb over there as their offensive coordinator. That's an offensive mind. That's a guy that I can trust to be creative enough to use Brock Bowers responsibly. You know, Brock Bowers is my baby, right? I just like every other UGA fan have been pounding the Brock Bowers drum since 2021. I vividly remember, excuse me, my neck had to crack there for a sec. I vividly remember being at the Buffalo Wild Wings in Fargo with some of my friends over Thanksgiving break. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving when UGA was playing Georgia Tech. That was when Brock Bowers was a true freshman. I say, guys, watch this Brock Bowers dude. He is so legit. He's going to be such a high pick in the draft in a few years. He's so good. Please just use him. Treat him well, NFL. Just please, just work with me here. Drop some plays for him. I do not want this to be another Kyle Pitts situation. Seattle would be a fun spot. I don't think he makes it past like 15 or 16, I will say. Maybe Cincy. I could see the Bengals being another good spot for him. I will say, it like early in the draft process, like back in like December, people had him going like at 5 to the Chargers. I don't think that happens. But I do think he will go high enough. He won't go as high as Pitts, but he is a special player. He is unique though. I really do like my comp of Aaron Hernandez. He's just a taller Aaron Hernandez. And before Aaron Hernandez killed someone, right? The Patriots used him well, and he was an extremely productive player, a great player for their offense. So just use him well. All right, here we go. The moment we've been waiting for. The Vikings are on the clock at pick 11, and I gotta say, if the Vikings don't get Drake May, this is probably the best plan B scenario. And I don't even know how realistic this is. They would probably have to trade up realistically. But if JJ McCarthy is on the board at 11 and the Vikings don't have to trade up or give up draft capital, that is best case scenario. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. Realistically, I do think McCarthy is going to be the Vikings guy, just based off of so many different things that I'll dive into in a sec. I think they would have to trade up, though. I think we'd be looking at probably 4 or 5 with the Cardinals or Chargers. And you can call it an overpay. I get it. McCarthy, you might see him as a bit of a reach. I totally understand that. I'm with you. Again, there's a reason I would much rather have May over McCarthy. But here's what I'll say. Caden saying Zach Wilson 2.0. Kind of, but not really. There are a few similarities. Here's what I'll say. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions over JJ McCarthy, right? He is like a Big Ten quarterback who played at a run-heavy offense at Michigan, and like, oh, he has like all the old heads love him because he wins and he's got the it factor or whatever. And so it can be easy to think like, oh, JJ McCarthy, just like this low ceiling type of guy, you know, he didn't even do anything in college, didn't have the eye-popping numbers. I think JJ McCarthy is a project. He is kind of the opposite. He's kind of a guy with a high ceiling but a lower floor. He is a bit of a risk. He's the youngest of all the major quarterback prospects. He's younger than Caleb. He's younger than May, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Penix. He's younger than all of them. He is a very good athlete. Like, he can move. He is fast. He likes playing in and out of structure. He can make some throws on the run. He gets a little creative. It gets him into trouble sometimes, which I will say, to your credit, Caden, sometimes a little Zach Wilson-esque. Like, there are some times where like he does get into trouble a little bit, but for the most part, he likes to play within the structure of the offense. And I just think the offense that he ran at Michigan has so many overlaps with what the Vikings like to do. And I know I say this so much. I know I sound like a broken record, right? Say it with me. You know what's coming. What do the Vikings do, and what does J.J. McCarthy do? They play under center. They like play action. They throw over the middle. They target the short and intermediate areas of the field. I know. But it works, and that's what the Vikings have been doing with Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson. That's what KOC likes to do. And I just think if there's any spot where J.J. McCarthy is going to work out, right, it is going to be the Vikings, 110%, right? Like, the Vikings taking J.J. McCarthy is a lot more stomachable than the Giants because it's just easier to envision him working out there. You know what? Maybe he is Brock Purdy. Maybe he's a system QB. Please give me a system QB. I'd love a system QB. That means our system is working, right? So there's been the Purdy comparisons. A comp that I kind of like for him is Tony Romo, just because they've got very similar builds and play styles and athletic traits. You know, he has a live arm. Again, there's stuff he needs to clean up, some mechanical stuff. He struggles throwing to his left, which I find really interesting. And a lot of people say, like, it's a harder throw for him because he's got to throw to the opposite side of the field. And just unless he can really step into it, he doesn't get quite enough arm strength. And that's something he's been working on. And people a lot smarter than me noticed that his mechanics were just better overall at the combine. But that's just the combine. You know, it's going to take a while for that to, like, fully manifest. Long story short, J.J. McCarthy, high risk, high reward. I think he's the Vikings guy. I really think at the end of the day, that's who they're going to get. He just makes sense for their scheme. he makes sense for their timeline and that he can sit behind Darnold for a little bit. In a perfect world, he just beat Darnold out for the job, and I'd just love to see him play, but like, whatever. We have Darnold. Yes, late surge a little bit. It's a risk, but I feel I would rather take a risk with J.J. McCarthy than like, oh, Bo Nix time. He's like 25 years old. He wasn't good until he left the SEC, but here we go. I feel like there's a lot more room to grow with McCarthy than Bo Nix. And when you've been building this offense for 2 years to try and suit a young quarterback and elevate him, you might as well take your swing with a guy with a higher ceiling, in my opinion, right? I don't know. Like, would you rather have Gardner Minshew or Brock Purdy, I guess? I don't know. Mile marker chuckling. Caden saying, I meant more of a late draft stock surge and he's going to bust. I mean, it is possible. And he did start to shoot up as Michigan started playing more and more prominent games. It happens. But I will say, like, we've seen that with, like, Joe Burrow had a late surge too, and he turned out all right. It is fair. Again, McCarthy could totally bust. Like, he is out of, like, the 4 big QBs. Like, he might be the most likely to bust. I get what the Vikings would be signing up for with him. It's a risky pick, and it's why I'm a little nervous, but I would not be mad. I would be significantly less mad if we got him at 11, though. Like, if we could keep our second first rounder, that would be nice. I don't think that's going to happen, but for the sake of this, that is what's going to happen. Well, since we're talking about quarterbacks, I teased this a little bit. So I predicted that there were going to be 4 first-round quarterbacks. I stand by that. However, let's not kid ourselves. The Broncos and Raiders are probably taking quarterbacks. Now, they would probably either trade back or just take him in the second round. I don't think they're going to stick and pick with quarterbacks here. But for the sake of this, for the sake of consistency, with no trading or anything, and just me wanting to try and make some fits that make sense for these quarterbacks, we're gonna get a little unrealistic here for these next 2 picks. So the Broncos, I'm going to have them taking Bo Nix. He just seems like a Sean Payton guy, doesn't he, right? Bo Nix's calling card is his accuracy. I question some of his accuracy. Not like, he is obviously an accurate passer. It's also easy to be accurate when you're only throwing the ball like 3 yards down the field. There is some to like, though. I mean, he's a moderate athlete. He's got a good enough arm. I like the Gardner Minshew comparison, as in, like, he could be a good Gardner Minshew, I guess. And if you give a good Gardner Minshew Sean Payton, see what happens. Again, I don't think this is going to happen at 12. Like, no way, right? Bo Nix at 12 would be a hilarious reach. If they really wanted him in the first round for that 5th-year option, which would be fair, right? Second rounders don't get that 5th-year option. They could trade back. They could take him, like, in this range, right? Same with the Raiders, who I'm going to give Michael Penix. And again, it's just, Michael Penix. I probably would have Penix over Nix on my board personally, but I can see how Sean Payton would want Nix and the Raiders might get Penix instead. Penix is a good pure spinner of the football, right? He does have a live arm. We saw him make some nice throws. I will say, I was having some dangerous thoughts watching that Washington-Texas game. Man, I will say, Michael Penix played pretty darn well in that game. The problem is he hasn't played like that every game, and even though his numbers look really good, just going and watching Penix a little bit, it's clear, like, man, he had some good receivers helping him out. There is something there. I think if we're going to compare Penix, Tua is the easy and maybe lazy comparison, but I think it's fair, and that just, like, they can throw the ball pretty well. There's some questions about how high of an upside there is. I don't buy how fast of a 40 Penix ran, to be honest. Like, I know he ran a super fast 40 at his pro day, and everyone was shocked. I've never really thought of Penix as a runner, to be honest. He is a guy that will just sit in the pocket and pick you apart. Maybe the Raiders don't go quarterback. They just want to stick it out with Gardner Minshew. I'm sure they might want Jaden Daniels because of that Antonio Pierce connection, but I'm going to give him Penix here. Again, I do think that, like, Nix might be a Bronco and Penix might be a Raider. I don't think it's going to happen at these respective picks, though. All right, pick 14. Let's go back to reality a little bit. This is another pick that I kind of like. The Saints on the clock, and they're going to take Talisa Fuaga. I mean, they need offensive line help. They really do. They have other needs, but There have been health concerns with Ryan Ramczyk, who is their right tackle, and a very good one, might I add. But there are a lot of severe, combining my words there, a lot of serious medical concerns with him. And then Trevor Penning at the other tackle just hasn't worked out. You know me, I love seeing my FCS guys succeed. Just has not worked out. And so you get Fuaga, who I think is a very, very good tackle. I watched a little bit of him. Go watch that UCLA game, man. He put in work against Latu. I mean, he had himself a game going up against maybe the best pass rusher in the class. So I think you can slide in Fuaga right away at left tackle. You hope Ramczyk is healthy, but you just don't know. But they need a tackle, and they've got other needs, but at least they've got like Olave and Shaheed. I know like PFF was listing wide receiver. No, I feel pretty good about the Saints taking tackle. I like Fuaga a lot. I think that one makes sense. All right, on to the Colts. My precious Colts, the hipster team for this year. This is the team that I'm going to be obnoxious about. Last year it was the Rams, and I'm still on the Rams bandwagon, don't worry. We are Colts fans this year on Dr. Pigskin. That is the team that I'm riding with. I love this Colts team so much, and I want them to get Brock Bowers. I don't think it's going to happen. And again, maybe it's one of those cases where maybe that's okay because then they can do the responsible thing, and that's address their secondary. I talked about this on my last stream. I would have loved to see them make a play for L'Jarius Sneed. They didn't. Turns out that report didn't quite happen. Got my hopes up for a sec that Sneed was going to be a Colt. They overachieved, their secondary did. I really like Juju Brents. He had a nice rookie year. But for the most part, you still need players here. Kenny Moore is a good nickel corner, but you got to get a guy. Mile marker saying precious. Yeah. I don't know. I just like the Colts this year, I guess. But you got to have a corner. I mean, this is the biggest weakness on the team right here. I feel pretty good about this offense if Anthony Richardson can stay healthy. Great defensive line, like their linebackers. Get a corner, right? Now, if you follow me on Twitter, you might have noticed I picked Cooper DeJean for the Colts at 15 last time around, and I thought, you know what? I think he's the best defensive back in this class. He just fills such a need. And while that's true, I'm gonna switch it up here. I'm gonna change my mind a little bit after thinking about it a little bit more. Not that I'm any lower on DeJean. I still really like him, and I think the type of player he is a new genre of player that we're really seeing pop up in the NFL some. But purely for the Colts, I think Quinyon Mitchell makes a little bit more sense here, simply because I think the biggest thing that the Colts need in particular in their secondary is just a true out-and-out boundary corner, right? They bring back Julian Blackmon at safety, great player. And then they've got Kenny Moore at nickel corner. The thing with Cooper DeJean, he totally could turn into just a great outside corner, and he did that a lot at Iowa. But he's an extremely versatile player that you could put there, you could put in the slot, or you could put at safety. That is kind of the magic and the charm of him, is that you have this positionless flexibility. And I think that you've already got some good players at nickel and at safety. You don't want to shoehorn him that much. Again, he could turn into a good boundary corner. He was a good one for Iowa, but Quinyon Mitchell has a little bit higher ceiling on the outside, and I just think that's what they need a little bit more. So I'm going to go Quinyon Mitchell to the Colts. DeJean will get taken. Don't worry. He will get taken, but I've got a better spot for him. I would not be upset if the Colts went Quinyon Mitchell at 15. Yeah. All right, get ready, Jack. Lock in. Seahawks time. As we've got a nice comment here from Mile Marker saying, "Hi, folks. Please like, share, and copy. You don't have to send it, but it still counts for the channel." Thank you. I appreciate it. Always loving the support, Oh, man. The Dr. Pigskin family. Can't beat it. You can't beat it. All right. Seattle Seahawks are on the clock. All right, Jack. Who would you want to see here? I've got a name in mind that I'm going to make a pick for in a quick second here, but I'm curious. Based off who is left on the board right now, who hasn't been taken, who would you want? As Caden is saying, Packers traded for DeJean. They would be a very interesting spot for them now, wouldn't they? Huh. That would be a good spot. I would like that fit. We'll see if he makes it that far, but I would, as a football observer, I would like it. Oh, he visited the Seahawks, so it's essentially guaranteed. I would love to see him in Mike McDonald's defense. I really would, right? That's the name of the game with him, is versatility. I mean, look at what he did with Kyle Hamilton, turning the safety into a nickel corner, back into a safety, just like all over the field, right? I mean, it was a joy to see, you know. I don't think secondary is maybe quite as big of a need because they've invested so much in corner, but I won't lie, Jack. When I was like thinking about these picks, I was seriously considering giving them to Gene. That would be pretty sick. Jack saying, I want Byron Murphy. Yeah, I could see it, right? Add a little bit more beef to that defensive line. You did bring back Leonard Williams, but, you know, again, like with how many sim pressures that this defense is going to run, you want guys to come in waves. I mean, that was a big strength of the Ravens, right, was their defensive line with Justin Madubuike really taking a leap forward. Why can't I find the Seahawks? There we go, right? You've got Leonard Williams, and you got that big nose tackle and Jaron Reed, Draymond Jones. I mean, it's a solid group, but I could totally understand, like, you know, wanting to get a high-end talent there. I don't hate that. Mile Marker saying, hope Seattle picks poorly. No offense, Seattle. They sure seem to have the Lions number. Yeah, we've got a little Seahawks-Lions rivalry. That was a crazy game week 2 last year with the blue ski masks and then the Tyler Lockett walk-off touchdown. Great game. And then the year before, they had a nice little shootout too. And the Seahawks beat the Lions in the playoffs in 2016. And they also had the ball batted out of the end zone for the touchback. That was a crazy little run. Very good point. Well, here we go. I make the rules for this. And I have matched the Seattle Seahawks with Troy Fautanu. This is one of my favorite picks, honestly. You know, the Seahawks have done a lot on their offensive line, and they've taken care of the tackle position pretty well, you know, right? Here's what I like about Fautanu, though. He could be a tackle or he could be a guard. He's a bit of a smaller guy, incredibly quick, right? Pretty long arms, too. That's why you could maybe see him still stay at tackle. He played tackle at Washington, but most people project him to guard. That is probably a slightly bigger need. They did bring in Laken Tomlinson, but they could address the interior of the offensive line a little bit more. And I tell you what, man, Ryan Grubb, right? Washington's offensive coordinator, now the Seahawks offensive coordinator. He knows the system, doesn't have to go very far. Fautanu gets to stay home. I love Troy Fautanu, and I think as we've seen football evolve over the past 2 years, guards have become a lot more important of a position, and we've seen it in some of these contracts guards are getting. I mean, look at how much the Rams spent on guards, or the Panthers gave Robert Hunt like $100 million, and as we've seen teams start to run the ball a little bit more again, that interior blocking has become super important. And as defensive tackles have just become more freakish and are great at rushing the passer. I mean, Aaron Donald is gone now, but you've still got like the Chris Joneses of the world. Like, you really need good guard play. And I think that Fautanu at 16 is a nice value. He fits the offense. He gets to stay home. I don't know. I would like it. But Jack saying play the Lions the year before in Seattle. Have to go to Detroit for the 3rd straight season. Oh, the schedule. Doing them dirty. Caden saying I want the Packers to draft O-line at some point. Oh, well, stay tuned. I might have something for you. No sheesh. Oofta in the chat. Let's go. North Dakota slang. We out here. Oh, yeah. Jack says, I take it back. A versus there. I want the Hawks to take him. I forgot Mike Morris was on the roster. He has a connection with Mike. Morris basically missed the entire season. And it was solid like the 5 snaps he played. Verse was another name I thought about. And I think he's the biggest faller that I have in this draft. And him and a few other guys. I don't know that Verse will fall this far. He was another name that I seriously thought about because they could afford to just address the front of their defense a little bit. But I've got Fautanu. All right, the Jaguars. We're halfway through. The Jaguars, man, they're killing me. Oh, one of my biggest ever videos is on this team, right? They're supposed to be in the good place. No, they're in the bad place all along. Torture. You know, there's a part of me that could see them going wide receiver here just because screw it, right? Like, get Trevor another receiver, I guess. They lose Calvin Ridley. That experiment didn't go the best. This is a team that quietly has a lot of needs, I will say. I will say. And you know what? I'm going to address one of those. I'm going to have to scroll a tiny bit for this guy. No way, he's this low. Come on. I just probably can't read. We're going to give the Jaguars a corner. We're going to give them Nate Wiggins. PFF thinks it's maybe a little bit of a reach. I don't know. I like Nate Wiggins, right? I've decided to dive into Nate Wiggins a little bit more because my friends were raving about him during our mock draft, and I was like, oh, crap. He's like one of the guys I haven't watched much of yet. Oh, man. I tell you what, his combination of length and speed and just overall tenacity. I mean, he is such a dog. He is such a competitive player. He projects to be a pretty good-looking man corner, and that's what the Jags are going to do, right? I mean, they cut Darius Williams for this very reason. They're bringing in Ryan Nielsen and looking to run a much more man-heavy defense. And so you need another corner, right? I keep on waiting for the Tyson Campbell breakout to happen, right? Like, the football hipsters have been waiting for Tyson Campbell to break out for like 3 years now. Hasn't happened. One more year. This is your last chance, man. Like I remember, you know, they do have Ronald Darby. But he, at this point, he's just kind of a veteran presence. You need to go corner. I mean, the secondary was a big problem for the Jaguars last year. And I don't know. I think you get a pretty good man corner here in Nate Wiggins. Makes sense for what they're trying to do. I think he's a good player. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes this high, to be honest. That's what I'll say. Jack saying, don't dislike the lineman pick. All right, we'll take it. We'll take it. Mile Marker saying, come on, Jags. I keep hoping for them. Me too. I don't know. They seem to have such a likable fan base, right? The Duval craziness. It would be so cool if the Jaguars were good. I feel so bad for that fan base. They've been waiting for so long. And Jack saying, I seriously think the Jaguars might finish last in the South. There is a chance, man. The South is looking pretty good. I'm not quite ready to give up yet because I'm back on the Trevor train. If like he stays healthy, I still think that they can be a good team. And there's at least pieces on this defense. But they are in a very tough spot because they're going to have to make a decision on Trevor soon if they're going to pay him or not. And they probably will. But, man, again, this is your rookie contract window. Look at what the Texans are doing to Stroud. They're going for it. There is absolutely a world where, the Titans could leapfrog them and they finish last. I won't strongly disagree with you on that. There is a chance. All right. Bengals. 18. This one right here is honestly giving me a lot of trouble. I have been thinking about this for so long. What are the Bengals going to do here at 18? This one broke me, honestly. I changed players so many times for this one. I don't feel the greatest about this one. I've thought about it. I am going to go Olu Fashanu, though. I mean, he's been here for so long, right? He's a guy that I was talking about earlier. I almost feel like he struggled a little bit with prospect fatigue. He could have came out in the draft last year and been a very, very high pick, but he ended up staying in school, which I respect the heck out of, right? He's like, I want to get my degree, right? Had another good year this year. It's not even like he played poorly. And He is a great tackle prospect, and I know the Bengals signed Trent Brown, and they've got Orlando Brown, but Orlando Brown isn't very good, and Trent Brown is kind of a headache, and he's on a one-year deal, and just offensive line has been such a big problem, and you saw Joe Burrow get battered around and get hurt, and, you need to keep Burrow healthy. You're paying him the big bucks. You need to take another swing on the offensive line. I don't love this. I will say, to Mile Marker's credit, as the Lions took DJ Reader from Cincy, I was seriously thinking about interior defensive line here. I don't know. I don't know why. I seriously was thinking about Byron Murphy. We're going to go Olu, though. I feel like someone's going to stop Olu's slide. He's been around for so long. J.C. Latham is another guy that probably won't realistically be available this late in the draft. He might, though. I mean, these teams have other needs outside of offensive line. And this is a very good and deep tackle class. So I think we will see some good tackles going later in the draft. And I think that this might reflect that a little bit. But, yeah, they at this point, Olu's just too good of a prospect for them to pass up. I know they've got two guys set at tackle for now. But I don't know. Olu could easily beat out Orlando Brown, in my opinion. I don't know. They are paying him big bucks, so he might play. But it's been rough for him. All right, the Rams, the other team at Dr. Pigskin, right? They're my team last year. All right. I feel like this one is pretty cut and dry. This was a pick that I made during the mock draft where I was the GM of the Rams. I'm going to make it again here. Jerzon Johnny Newton, right? You cannot replace Aaron Donald. You obviously cannot. He's maybe the greatest football player to ever walk the earth. But Newton is at least a similar archetype of player where he's maybe a bit smaller, but he's got very high pass rushing upside. And that's what they need, right? They've got Kobe Turner and they've got Byron Young. Go get another guy on the interior. They did a good job of addressing their secondary in the offseason. Go fill that hole. Try your best to replace Aaron Donald. He is not going to get 20 sacks. He won't. If you could get like 7, that's a win, right? You just do what you can. He's left such a massive hole in this defense now. You got to try your best to patch it up. Some people might like Byron Murphy more. I don't hate that one bit. I think Newton just has a bit more upside as a pass rusher, and that makes more sense for the Rams here. But I don't know. There are some people, like I know Peter Schrager in his mock said, like, you best believe Sean McVay is going to use his first ever first round pick on an offensive player. I get that, but man, they need defense so much more. They need defense. Their defense is in an interesting spot, and that they lost probably their two most important figures in Aaron Donald and Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris is a big loss. I think people are kind of understating how big of a loss that was for the Rams, but they made some good signings in free agency. Like Trey White isn't the player he once was, but he's probably their corner 2 at this point. You bring in Darius Williams back in LA, just a guy that I've always loved. And then Cam Curl, one of the most underrated players in the NFL over at safety. Their secondary should be substantially better. You bring in Newton, and the defense is looking pretty good. Jack says, I liked it better when the Rams were bad. There was a moment where it looked like they were going to be bad for a minute, but I tell you what, man, Sean McVay and Les Snead, just give them a year, let them cook, and they'll turn it around. I mean, Puka Nacua, round 5. Oh, here's Kyron Williams. We're going to go spend our money on guards. Oh, this is such a sick team, man. Oh, I tell you what, though, you probably dislike the 49ers more. I would take it. I don't know. I could see the Rams challenging the Niners for the division this year if the Rams stay healthy. I really could. I don't know. We'll see. Losing Donald stunk, though, man. I was so sad. Anyways, Steelers are on the clock at 20. Get hyped, Michael. It's time to wave the terrible towels. The Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock. I like this pick a lot, too. They got to go receiver, right? I mean, we've talked about the lack of depth in their receiver room since trading Deontay Johnson. Why do I always think he's a Johnston? I don't know. Go get Brian Thomas, right? I have him as my wide receiver 4 in this class. Very, very talented, great athlete, super explosive, right? Pair him with Pickens. Michael asking if the con artist trades this pick for Ayuk. I mean, if you do that, you take that offer and run, right? Like, I like Brian Thomas a lot, but man, if you could get Brandon Ayuk for pick 20, you absolutely do that. He has been linked a lot with the Steelers. It would make a lot of sense. We could see it. I have a feeling that we might see one crazy trade during the draft that involves a player. I don't know if it's going to be Higgins or Ayuk, but we might see one player trade. Remember the A.J. Brown trade from a few years ago? From an entertainment standpoint, I hope we see something like that. But for the purposes of this draft, no trades, we're going to go Brian Thomas. I mean, Van Jefferson is their wide receiver 2 right now? Get another wide receiver. Throw in Pickens, Freiermuth. You got a nice running game. The O-line is coming along nice enough. Hey, wave those towels. Little brotherly banter in the chat. Ayuk isn't going anywhere. I've seen this story before. Shut up, Jack. Cough, cough, Deebo Samuel. Yeah, I remember when Deebo Samuel was going to be a Jet for like 2 days? Good times. I do think maybe at some point, though, they might lose one of those receivers. I think it is bound to happen. Like, they can't keep getting away with this for all this time. Who knows, though? 49ers don't like trading their good players like tryhards. Dude, shame on them for trying, right? Just give up. All right, Dolphins on the clock at pick 21. This is where Byron Murphy's slide ends. You know, Byron Murphy could go fairly high in this draft. He could go as high as like the early teens. it's going to stop here. The Dolphins lose Christian Wilkins in free agency. Just a big blow. I mean, really a special player, and he did a good job of keeping that defense together. They lost Andrew Van Ginkel as well, but he's more of an edge guy, right? Linebacker. But losing Christian Wilkins really hurts the Dolphins. So if they can go get Byron Murphy, recoup their losses a little bit, that helps a lot. You know, this Dolphins defense, once they got up to speed, were pretty good last year. But man, they lost some pieces, and they lost Vic Fangio. Kind of a big loss that's kind of flown under the radar a little bit. He chose to leave them. I mean, I've given my Dolphins take. I think this is a team that could fall off really quickly. I think they've done what they can in free agency. Like, they've made some good moves. They got Jordan Brooks. They bring in, well, they'll draft someone. In this case, they're drafting Byron Murphy, but I have some questions about the Dolphins. But Byron Murphy's slide ends. We're going to end another slide too. Sorry, Caden. He's not going to make it to the Packers. We're going to have the Eagles take Cooper DeJean. Does he not just seem like an Eagle? I mean, they desperately need help in the secondary, right? And it's all over. Like, their safeties are terrible. I mean, remember how many times I said over the course of this season how weak the spine of the Eagles defense was? You guys remember that? The spine of the defense? Well, DeJean can step in and be a safety right away. He can go play corner. I mean, Darius Slay has kind of been showing his age a little bit. And that that James Bradbury contract that they gave out is not looking good because he hit a wall. And they do bring back CJ Gardner-Johnson, who's another versatile piece. But you add him and Cooper DeJean, just guys you can kind of mix around a little bit. And maybe there's an injury and you can kind of patch things up a little bit. They just need someone in the secondary, and they've shown that they can be creative with these different players. And hey, look at that, Vic Fangio, right? He's their defensive coordinator now. I could see him being a little creative with the Gene. So I like this spot. And again, they need to go secondary, I really feel like. So Cooper DeJean to the Eagles. Oh, all right. Well, the Vikings are back on the clock. This next pick is probably not going to happen. I don't even think the Vikings are going to hold this pick. But just for the sake of talking about a pick I'd like to see the Vikings make, we might have to search this guy up. I don't know that he's going in the first round. Yeah, his ADP is 88. I don't care. I want to talk about T'Vondre Sweat because I tell you what, you know what the Vikings need? I mean, I have lamented our defensive line so much. We just need a massive human being. That's really what we need, is just size up front. I mean, man, oh man, did we miss Dalvin Tomlinson last year. Go back and watch that Eagles Thursday night game where Kirk was nice with it and he was slinging it and everything. But DeAndre Swift just absolutely tore us a new one. And we just could do nothing against the run. And the Eagles' interior offensive line ate us for dinner. I mean, look at this. Harrison Phillips is playing out of position. He's honestly not that bad of a player. He's not a nose tackle, though. He's just not big enough. He should be playing where Jerry Tillery or Jonathan Bullard is playing. Harrison Phillips is quite literally in the wrong position right now because we just don't have a nose tackle. And Jerry Tillery, famous epic bust, right? Maybe he's a pass rush rotational guy, but if you bring in T'Vondre Sweat, you can kick Harrison Phillips outside a tiny bit more. Tillery can be that rotation guy. And it's a little bit more palatable when you've got Sweat, Harrison Phillips, and Jonathan Bullard. That's much, much better. So, again, I recognize T'Vondre Sweat, probably not going in the first round. Honestly, if the Vikings did that, though, if they just said, screw it, we're going to Detroit Lions it, we don't care about the consensus big boards, we're taking T'Vondre Sweat at 23, I would be happy. I would genuinely be happy if the Vikings took T'Vondre Sweat at 23 overall. I really don't care. Screw the big boards, right? This is my universe. Jack saying, yes, the Vikings trade for another first-round pick and pick a guy projected to go in the third round. Marker saying, LOL. And Michael Doty saying, there's always some prospect who isn't projected to go in the first round that finds his way in there and vice versa. Hey, Jack Campbell, anyone? I made some insane, crazy noises when Jack Campbell went in the first round last year. Now, again, This is just for the sake of, I want to talk about, like, I would like to see T'Vondre Sweat go to the Vikings in one way or another, and they might have to make a trade or two to make that happen, because they don't exactly have a embarrassment of riches of draft capital right now. They've got those 2 first rounders. They don't have a very deep bag of draft picks, but that's what I'll say. I mean, I thought about this for a while. I was like, what else could they do? Like, they could go other spots, but this truly would make me the happiest. Just give me someone huge, really. Just give me mass up the middle. All right, Cowboys. Let's go back to reality a little bit. This is another pick that I like. Cowboys going to go Jackson Powers Johnson. High-graded center, right? Not often you see a center go very high. We saw Tyler Linderbaum a few years ago. That worked out pretty well. We saw Garrett Bradbury a few years before that. Didn't work out quite as well, but easily the best center in this draft class. And I tell you what, the Cowboys, they do need it, right? They lost Tyler Biadasz in free agency. You might be looking at other spots on the offensive line, and that's fair. They lose Tyron Smith, but they're going to kick Tyler Smith out to left tackle, and he's already shown that he can play that at a high level when Tyron Smith was hurt, right? I really feel like it is more of the interior. You still got Zach Martin, but the guard and center spot ain't looking so hot. You're hoping Terrence Steele can just stay afloat there. This could be a decent spot for J.C. Latham, right, who is a right tackle. But I'm going to go Jackson Powers Johnson. Get him a center. They lost their guy in free agency. They haven't really made an effort to replace him. So I like this pick. I like this one a lot, honestly. Give me a first-round center. It's a hard position, man. It really is. You got to be smart. You got to call out protections. You got to block against some of these aforementioned massive human beings. So I like some JPJ to the Cowboys. All right, here we go. Here we go, Caden. Get ready. Lock in. It's Packers time. And I got to say, I'm proud of this Packers pick. You know, again, I try and be neutral here, right? This is Dr. Pigskin as an enjoyer of football speaking. I'm not preying on the Packers' downfall here or anything. And I like this pick. I like it a lot. If there's anything that we've seen with this Packers regime, is that they love their dogs. Ho, ho, right? Packers going to get another dog here in Amarius Mims. And I tell you what, man, this dude's ceiling is absolutely sky high. There is a world where he turns out to be the best tackle in this draft class. There's a lot of concerns over he hasn't played very much. He's incredibly raw, right? He's played like only 800 snaps in his entire collegiate career. But man, when he's been out there, it's just so hard to miss. I mean, he has all these tools and traits that you just cannot teach, with unbelievable size and speed and power. And he just was blowing people up out there, man. I mean, seriously, like just, and with Green Bay's track record, right? Again, he is a bit of a riskier prospect. Caden was saying earlier, I'd like to see him go O-line. They have some good offensive linemen, but they could use another tackle. I tell you what, man, there are a few organizations in this league that I can trust to develop offensive linemen. We've got the Eagles, we've got wherever Bill Callahan is, and we've got the Green Bay Packers. I mean, I don't know what it is with these guys. If it's like that Wisconsin diet or whatever, right? But the University of Wisconsin and the Green Bay Packers churn out offensive linemen like it's no one's business. And I just, man, if they could coach up Mims to his full potential, that is going to be genuinely terrifying. So I like that a lot. I think that Mims to the Packers, I don't know if he makes it all the way down there, but it would be a good fit. Cody Warren in here, I hope I got your name right, newcomer to the stream, saying, please no, take it that you're not a big Packers fan, but welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing well. And we've got James in here saying, hi, doctor. Welcome to the stream, James. We're doing, like I said, a mock draft of sorts. Again, it's not a perfect science, but I'm essentially just trying to make picks that I like and make sense. And you might see T'Vondre Sweat at 23, right? Probably not going to happen. And went through the quarterbacks a little bit. Bo Nix and Penix, probably not going there, but just wanted to talk about the fits a little bit. No trades, just making semi-realistic picks that I think make sense. But if Mims is here, man, him going to the Packers would just be terrifying, I think. And they're an organization that could really develop him. But all right, Buccaneers on the clock now. Talked about J.C. Latham not that long ago. Been sliding in this draft. Again, he could go like as high as 10, honestly. Like with the Jets right there, like they could totally just take J.C. Latham and be like, sick, we got another tackle, right? Tyron Smith is kind of injury prone, and Morgan Moses is a bit older, right? Keep him waiting in the wings. But if he makes it down here, it makes so much sense for the Bucks. And now here's what I'll say, without getting myself or someone else into trouble, and I don't even know if it's a big deal or not. I wouldn't even say a source with the Bucks. Like, I don't have any like leaked information or anything. A Buccaneers employee seems to be convinced that the Buccaneers are going offensive line here, right? And so if they can go right tackle, that makes a lot more sense. They slid Tristan Wirfs over to left tackle. Worked out great. I mean, Hall of Fame level player, man. I think he's going to have a bust in Canton one day. And I honestly, I thought that Luka Hideki was pretty solid, but if they are going to go offensive line, right tackle probably makes the most sense. And Latham is an actual right tackle, so I like it. I like it. Cody saying, huge Packers fan. 8 games isn't enough. I feel you. I totally understand that. Again, there is a bit of a risk with going with Mims, right? Those 8 games, 800 snaps or whatever. I trust your guys' coaching staff to coach them up, though. And with how good the rest of the Packers line is right now, let's say he doesn't pan out. The Packers line was pretty good last year, but if Mims hits, then I don't know. I get it, though. There's a lot of concerns, but I feel like at pick 25, you feel pretty good taking a swing. I could see Green Bay going defense, though, too. They bring in their new defensive coordinator. Was kind of a problem for him last year. You're hoping that the new coaching and scheme can fix some of that. I like the Xavier McKinney signing a lot, but there's still maybe a little bit of work to do there. But I feel like Mims at 25, that's a talent you just can't pass up. James saying, oh, Mr. DUI. James says, I'm here for it just in time for the Bills pick. Yeah, I think you're going to like it. I think this would be a good pick for the Bills once we get through these Cardinals here. We've got Pear Champ in here too saying, hey, doctor, just saying hello and hope the stream is going well. Appreciate it, man. We just got your Packers pick, right? Amarius Mims. Hope that you approve of that, but good to see you back in here. And I tell you what, hope to see you guys next week for the actual first round of the draft because we are going to be locked in for that. All right. Cardinals at 27. This is a pick that would probably have to happen for them to trade up. We're going to end another slide. There have been some slides at the end of this draft. This one makes so much sense. Jared Verse to the Cardinals. Here's a fun question, and I discussed this with James and a few others during our mock draft on Sunday night. Can you name a Cardinals edge rusher right now? I had to look this up, and once I saw one of them, I was like, oh, that's right. I forgot they put him there. Seriously, try and name a Cardinals edge rusher. I mean, it's not good. It's not good, and I said earlier with my earlier Cardinals pick, they need defense, right? I mean, they moved Zaven Collins to edge, and then they've got Dennis Gardeck, right? Go get Jared Verse. Best edge left, right? Again, probably won't make it that far. Big, larger guy, maybe not quite as jaw-dropping of a ceiling, but a dependable guy you can plug in, can set the edge pretty well, get after the quarterback. They just need defense. And this Jonathan Gannon defense has been a fun little development. They're not very talented, but they play with their hair on fire, and I love it. Oh, they were fun to watch last year. They were in a lot of close games. I have a soft spot for this Jonathan Gannon Cardinals squad. Everyone thought he was set up to fail. And look at them. They won 4 games. All right, here we go. Bills time. Bills on the clock, right? This is them not trading up. Could see them maybe trying to take a Julio Jones level swing to try and get a Dunze or Neighbors, right? Maybe they really like Brian Thomas and they try and sneak in a little bit here. But I tell you what, their patience is being rewarded here. The Bills are going to go get A.D. Mitchell. And James, I know this is someone that you've been asking for a bit more of a field stretcher, if I'm not mistaken, right? You want that guy that can go win the ball over the top. I like a lot of the pieces that they have right now, honestly. I really like Shakir. Dalton Kincaid looked pretty good, but they don't quite have a guy that can take the top off the defense. You bring in A.D. Mitchell, who's a great deep threat, can win those deep balls, very athletic. I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense. You replace Diggs with him. I don't know. What do you think of that? I kind of like A.D. Mitchell if they stick and pick. Oh, you got Curtis Samuel too, right? I like the way that you described Joe Brady using those auxiliary weapons, But you got to get a guy for Josh to just unleash the hounds with too, right? And I think that A.D. Mitchell is that kind of guy that can do that. And he is a pretty refined route runner. Like, he's a pretty good separator, has a good understanding of leverage. Yeah, I watched the Brett Coleman video on A.D. Mitchell. He's a talented receiver, and, you know, he's been a dog for a while. I like it. 80 at 28 to the Bills. James saying, I'm scared for who you have for the Bills. Hopefully that wasn't too scary. All right, Lions at 29. Another guy that might not make it this far. I don't know. Like, I could see some of these teams taking corners, I guess. Peter Schrager had this guy going at 11 to the Vikings, and I about lost my mind in a Helen City Commission meeting. I was like, please, no. Not even that I don't like the player, but we do not need corner. But we're going to go Terrion Arnold to the Lions. I mean, the Lions need a corner, right? One of their top corners right now is, like, in prison, I guess. Something like that stuff going on. And they did bring in Carlton Davis, but that secondary got picked on so much. And with how much man coverage they run, they need defense. Mile marker saying defense. Oh, yeah, right? I think corner just makes the most sense. If you're the Lions and Terrion Arnold is there at 29, we're going to see another shot of Brad Holmes, like, thumping his chest in the war room, like, let's go, you know? Knowing the Lions, they could just, like, have something up their sleeve and take, like, I don't know, Andrew Phillips, but, you know. They do love their Bama players. They love their SEC guys. I think this one makes a lot of sense. And I tell you what, man, the Lions, they might be even better this year. We all thought that was their last chance. I don't know, man. They've retooled pretty well. Their defense is looking a little bit better. And if they go corner in the draft, that's looking to be a pretty good defense. I don't know, man. I don't know. I am quite scared of the Lions. I'm not going to lie. I mean, the Vikings have their own issues to worry about before even, like, worrying about the Lions, I guess. But Michael saying big game player too, talking 80. Oh, absolutely, dude. I mean, he always goes off against Alabama, had some big time performances. He really is a dog. He's got that killer instinct, you know. Maybe some few like attitude concerns like taking plays off, but I don't know. You just get him to lock in, right? Mile marker saying, oh yeah, we got a Lions fan stamp of approval. That's what we like to hear. All right. Ravens, we're getting down to it. Ravens. Kind of need offensive line, to be quite honest, right? They lose Morgan Moses, and Ronnie Stanley. You just can't really count on him to stay healthy. It's such a shame because he's a great player, but he just really has not been healthy for a while now. We're gonna give the Ravens a tackle. We're gonna give him Tyler Guyton, another massive human being, right? 6'8". You can slide him over at right tackle. You have him and Ronnie Stanley. Hope that they're just healthy, right? But they could use another tackle. That was kind of a problem that reared its ugly head, and especially when Stanley was hurt last year. This is a pretty well-built team, the Ravens. They do have a few spots that they could address, and at 30, take Tyler Guyton. Good tackle. We're getting down to it. Kanan says, you've said you're scared of every NFC North team. I am, dude. See, here's the thing, man, and I fully recognize this. There is a world where, like, the Vikings could be sick. Like, if the Vikings get May, or even if, like, McCarthy turns out well, the Vikings could be so sick. But there's also probably just as likely, if not even more likely, like, the Vikings could finish last in the North. I am fully prepared for that. I don't think that's crazy to say that the Vikings finish last in the NFC North. Not even because they're a bad team. Like, I like a lot of the moves that we've made in the offseason. I think we've gotten better. Unfortunately, so has every other team, and at least as of right now, we have the clear-cut worst quarterback situation in the division. And just like every other team is pretty good. So, yeah, I am scared of every NFC North team. I'm not going to lie, man. I am. It's going to be an uphill battle, but we got to keep the faith, right? Oh, please give me Drake May. I want him. All right, that's enough of that. We've got two more picks. 49ers, give me Graham Barton, right? They're another team that kind of needs offensive line. Been banged up, and honestly, outside of Trent Williams, don't have a whole lot. Barton has a little bit of versatility, and you can play him at tackle or guard. He's got a lot of experience in that famous zone scheme, right? Duke been doing a lot of zone, asking him a lot of that, asking a lot of him out of that. he's gonna fit like a glove in this 49ers offense. I mean, it just makes so much sense. Again, just a nice pick that makes sense, right? I mean, seriously, look at this. You have one of the greatest tackles of all time, and then vibes, right? Like they just need a lineman. Barton makes sense schematically. So Gabe saying, clip that. I want him. I want him. We'll see. Dr. Pigskin turns out to be a whiny 10-year-old. 10, more like 5 or 6, honestly. But all right, last pick. Who is going to be the last pick in the first round? We got the Chiefs on the clock. Give me Ladd, right? I mean, the Chiefs need a receiver. I think Ladd makes a lot of sense. Rashee Rice, you've got some questions about whether he's going to be allowed to play or not with certain things going off the field. You lose MVS, maybe not as big of a loss. You do bring in Hollywood Brown, but the Chiefs, I think they know that they kind of got away with winning the Super Bowl last year. Not to say that they got lucky or anything, but like it's just one of those things where it's like, man, how did we win the Super Bowl with this receiver room? I really like the move to get Hollywood Brown. You add in Ladd, great route runner, separator, a guy who, the easy, lazy comparison is Cooper Kupp because he's a white slot guy. Here's what I'll say, though. Ladd actually played a lot out wide at Georgia, so I think you could split him out wide there, and he's pretty athletic. A comparison that I saw today that I kind of like is Deontay Johnson. I see a little Deontay Johnson in his game, so you add in Ladd with Rashee Rice if he's allowed to play, Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown. Oh, I mean, the Chiefs could easily three-peat. I'm not saying they will, but again, just a nice little pick that makes sense. So that concludes the mock draft of sort, right? The picks that just make sense in my brain. It makes my brain happy seeing these picks. We're going to download this image. We'll see how many of these we get right. I'm going to say we're going to shoot for like 8 right. I feel like even that's a high bar, right? Like I feel like, okay, this one's going to be right. This one will probably be right. This one will, like the first 4, Odunze, bit of a bigger swing, Odunze over Neighbors. I could easily see Neighbors, but we'll see. Joe Alt, I think that one's going to be right, but we'll see how many of these nail with no trades. But okay, that was a fun little exercise. That was a fun little mock draft of sorts, We'll switch back to the main camera now. Hope you guys enjoyed. 100 minutes, about 2 hours. I think I'm going to call it quits here soon. Been a nice long day. Got a little stream and a little draft preview for the big main event, which is next week, man. I just... Get ready. We're going to have ourselves a time. And it's going to be a long stream, but I can't wait. I mean, we're going to stream the whole first round, right? My parents aren't around anymore to tell me I have to go to bed before the first round ends. I can stay up for all the picks. It is going to be one of the craziest nights in Vikings history. Maybe. We'll see. Drake May no matter what. That's what I'll say. I watched Draft Day last week. I might... If I have some time, I'll try and write my review of Draft Day. I'd actually watched it before, but I watched it again. Fun movie. Not perfect by any means. Some of it is just laughably unrealistic and it's cheesy and over the top, but it's a fun movie. If you like football, I recommend go watch Draft Day with an open mind or go revisit it. I'll try and make the review. We'll see if I have time, but I do love Draft Day. It has a special place in my heart. It's not Citizen Kane or anything, but that was good fun. Thank you, Mile Marker. Gabe saying, I love you. I love you too, man. And Mile Marker saying, Detroit drama. Michael saying, do you have a jersey to wear next week? I'm thinking about that. If I'm going to wear the jersey, if I'm going to bust out the jacket. I don't know. I might rock a jersey. I've got the Jefferson, right? Go get Jefferson as quarterback. Or I might bust out the jacket. We'll see. We'll see how I feel waking up. That's a good question, though. I have been itching to bust out a Vikings jersey. I don't know. Mile Marker saying, fun, fave, silly movie. Who would win in a fight, Bo Callahan or Bo Cruz? Bo Cruz would eat him for lunch. I mean, it's not even close. Hey, Bo Callahan's a big softie, right? Vontae Mack beat him up. Vontae Mack's a real football player. Let's go. All right. With that in mind, thank you guys so much for tuning in. That was a great time. Good to be back streaming. It's been a while, right? It's been like 3 weeks. So nice little draft preview. I will see you guys all next week for the main event, the first round of the NFL draft, some Detroit drama. But until then, hope you guys take it easy. Have a nice, enjoyable weekend and get ready for the pinnacle of the off season next week. All right. I love you guys. The doctor's out.